Regina, great leaders always say we. Good job. Thank you. So next on recognitions and announcements, wanted just to point out about Dr. Killen. Dr. Killen, a couple weeks ago, was awarded the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network, the Regional Suicide Prevention Award. If you read my memo about 2 weeks ago, he was honored for the award, basically for what he's been doing to bring awareness in Maury County Public Schools about suicide prevention. He was honored for piloting the Suicide Behavior Procedure Checklist with Maury County Public Schools, which has helped enhance and streamline the protocol ahead of the statewide release. And he's in doing this, he's helped schools across Tennessee improve their ability to react to and help students in a crisis. Ms. Peary also received this award a couple years ago, so I wanted to tell her thank you for letting me know, because we were able to get his family there anonymously to support him as he won that award. So, Ms. Peary, again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Want to thank Spring Hill Middle School for leading the pledge and the artwork. Great job. Looks really good behind us. And now we're going to move on to a combination of recognition and announcements and what we call the good news. The good news is something we like to highlight every single month to talk about great things that are going on in Maury County Public Schools, and this is definitely something that's great that's going on in Maury County Public Schools. So for Serve Sunday, we had multiple churches contribute time and resources to help make our schools look much more beautiful, make them look great. They made them look wonderful. So pastors in the room who were invited tonight, could you please come to the microphone, please? Who wants to lead off? Who wants to talk about Serve Sunday? Oh, you volunteer.
Regina, shaky knees. Gotcha. I'm not sure what we're talking about.
So could you tell us a little bit about Serve Sunday and what happened?
Absolutely. We had 5 churches, 6 congregations that worked in 32 schools. Is that right? Yeah, 32 schools in 2 counties. And so it was an exciting day. We canceled our worship services and instead decided to worship through service. This was the weekend of Labor Day weekend, so consider it corny or a pun, but it was a labor of love. So we just had the joy of being able to go in, and this started last year. Yeah, it was just a vision that we were given last year, and we started with 19 schools. So we were excited this year to have multiple churches come together and actually do it on the same day and be able to reach more schools. And I'm excited to say that we already have about 3 other churches that are on board for next year. And our intent is to be in every single Maury County school next year for all the projects. And what it looks like is this. We just send a request to the principals, ask them what kind of projects they have on their list. A lot of it was landscaping or painting and things along that nature. So I put it this way, things that you walk by every single day and you think, man, I wish somebody would fix that, and you never really can, because you're focusing on all the other maintenance things that you have to do. So we were able to do landscaping and painting and put a few coats of paint on the walls and things of that nature. So it was exciting. It was fun. You've read the list of churches, I'm sure, that were on that: Murray Hills, Thompson Station Church, Main Campus and Columbia Campus, Allensville Baptist, Hampshire First Baptist Church, Restoration Church, and Zion Presbyterian Church. So we're real excited to have all of them on board. Allensville, we said that right? Mm-hmm. All right, Allensville. Make sure we had everybody.
Yeah. So who's with you tonight? Who came?
I'm Reverend David Ward from Allensville. We got to work at Hampshire, and it's the first time. We're going to do it every year from now on. We're just blessed that you let us do that, sir. And I had a great time working with your principal there, and we got to have a small devotion when we started, and we did a lot of work. It was just awesome. So
who's behind you?
My name's Lisa South. I'm representing Murray Hills Church.
Excellent. And to hear you talk about it, it sounds kind of small. Miss Shirley, could you blow up the attachment, please? Because what people need to know is it just wasn't just a little bit of painting, and it wasn't just a little bit of landscaping. So at Baker Elementary School, you filled in 2 groundhog holes behind the school. You removed random brush from the fences and cracks in the cement. You removed vines from the school. You removed tetherball poles from campus. You removed the broken items from the area around the dumpsters. You cleaned out the weeds from the student gardens. You removed broken trash cans. You cleaned out weeds from the mulch beds. You landscaped in the front. You carried away cones. You painted exterior doors. You swept under the shelter. You hauled off toy boxes on the pre-K playground, and you painted the hallway stripe. That's just at one school, Baker Elementary School. Thank you, Murray Hills. At Joseph Brown, painted the stage wall in the gym, landscaped in the front of the track and the general maintenance in the halls, bathroom and sinks. Thank you, Murray Hills. At Horace Porter, installation of a concrete sidewalk, updated the landscape, adding
I'm so
numbers to
glad
the
they
parking
got that
lot.
sidewalk done. That's awesome.
Yeah, there it is. And thank you again, Murray Hills. Thompson Station at Cox Middle School, mulched, waterproofed the picnic tables and the planters, cleaned the grounds, and pressure washed the side of the building. Thank you, Thompson Station. Murray Hills, Allensville Baptist, and Hampshire First Baptist at Hampshire painted the student restrooms, positive sayings on the walls in student restrooms, library walls painted, steam cleaned the elementary rugs, Hampshire sign at 166 Highway needed repainting, trimmer topped the bushes, flower garden by the gym, hawk sign by the music project lead the way room, rock gravel refill by the bus ramp. Thank you. Highland Park, Murray Hills Church and Zion Presbyterian painted the entrance and hallway, picked up trash around campus, cleaned the garden area, cleaned and disinfected all student desks, and painted the downstairs bathrooms. Thank you to Thompson Station Church at Randolph Howell. You painted the foyer and the blue and yellow pops.
It does.
The entrance, the entryway areas, and the gym. At McDowell, thank you, Murray Hills. The playground and basketball court was you did maintenance. You landscaped both the front and the back of the school, and you painted the outside doors and entryways. And that's the green doors in the middle that you can see from the road. Also, Murray Hills from Mount Pleasant Elementary School, the hallway walls next to the restrooms were cleaned. You caulked behind a sink in room 115. You power washed the sidewalk. You sprayed poison ivy starting to grow in the trees in the front of the school. You painted the benches on playgrounds. You pressure washed the plastic playground equipment. You pressure washed the side of the building. You trimmed the tree limbs, marquee signs, pavers on the ground around the sign. You cleaned exterior lights. You sprayed poison weeds on the sidewalks and the parking lane around the basketball court. You weed-eated the basketball court. You weeded the garden. You pulled up cabbage and compost. You pulled weeds in the mulch. The pre-K playground, you raked the mulch evenly around the swings. You swept the entrance on the pre-K side. You scraped the orange walls off next to the kindergarten store. There's so much. I have to take a deep breath. You pressure washed under the bus ramp. You painted eggshell color under the bus ramp. You painted the poles and doors at the bus ramp. And you painted the doors on the pre-K second, third grade playground, fourth grade hall doors. At Mount Pleasant Middle School, Thompson Station Church, you pressure washed the main entrance of the school. You landscaped the front of the school. And you built 4 garden boxes and refurbished the old boxes. At Riverside, Thompson Station, you painted the hallways. You rehung student artwork in the hallways after painting. That's good. You pressure walked the sidewalks. You mowed the front lawn. You cleaned the pre-K playground. You topped the trees. And you provided breakfast for the faculty on Monday morning. At Santa Fe, Thompson Station Church painted the exterior doors, painted the handrails in the gym, painted bookshelves, repainted bus numbers and car rider spots. You washed the outside windows. You pulled the weeds in the flower beds. You shoveled the gravel out of the road to the elementary playground. At Spring Hill Elementary School, Restoration Church weeded the memorial garden. At Spring Hill Middle School, Thompson Station landscaped, weeded, trimmed bushes, and put down mulch. At Spring Hill High School, Thompson Station Church landscaped, weeded, trimmed bushes, put down mulch, and you did litter pickup. At Whitthorne Middle School, Thompson Station, the stage was painted black. The main cross hall was painted gray, and the 5th grade hall was painted gray. At Woodard Elementary School, Murray Hills Church striped the parking lot. And last but not least, at Marvin Wright Elementary School, Thompson Station Church trimmed the shrubs and bushes. That's not just a little stuff. You guys did a lot of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the good news for today. At this time, Murray County Education Association, do we have a representative to speak on their behalf? Mr. Hubner, come on down.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Marzak. We have 2 teachers tonight who will be addressing the board, Miss Wendy Benefield and Miss Beth Fullerton. Thanks so much in advance for your kind attention.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wendy Benefield. I'm a veteran teacher of 25 years at Mount Pleasant High School. I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to address you this evening. The Murray County Education Association is continuing to work with the teachers of Murray County to provide the best atmosphere we can in learning for our students. On October the 24th, we will be hosting a new educator mixer and professional development opportunity for teachers with 0 to 5 years experience. We would like to thank the school district for getting our raises added to our salaries. Yay! And look forward to the back pay that we're going to get this week. However, we do want to make sure that you are aware of the Tennessee Code Annotated Section 49-3-306B2, which states, state education funds received by any LEA for the state salary schedule shall be payable in equal installments, starting with the first regular pay period. And 49-3-314 provides that state education finance funds shall be distributed annually to the LEAs as follows. 1/10 of the estimated total shall be distributed on or about August 15th and on or about the 15th day of each succeeding month through April the 15th. Also, our UNISERV coordinator had a conversation with the Executive Director of Finance for the State Department of Education, who said that there was no reason that a school system should ever delay giving a raise based on the department's review of a budget. The review is to make sure that the school district is meeting maintenance of effort and that they are rightly distributing the funds the state sends down for salary and insurance. She had no knowledge of any school district ever withholding a raise that was approved by a school district and their county commission based on her department's review. Because of this, we look forward in the future to receiving any raise agreed to in the first pay period of the next school year. Several of our members continue to be very concerned that the salary used to calculate our TCRS benefits is not equaling what their scheduled salary was for last year, nor is it on track to be correct for this year. This can affect the benefit payout for those who are in their highest 60th month of income. The average during which those 60 months will be lower than it should because they are 1 month short on contributions for the year. We appreciate that Eric Perriman is working with several of our members in order to get this corrected. However, if it is incorrect for several, it probably is incorrect for everyone. And there is no way that folks moving through the salary schedule will ever get to the highest salary they should, as that 1 month can make a difference and will always fall into the next year. We look forward to a resolution of this matter and would be very happy to work with finance to get the best possible results. We members, we love our students, and we want the very best that we can do for them. However, it's really difficult to be at our best when some schools are asking teachers to frequently give up planning time, attend PLCs, IEPs, grade level meetings, etc., beyond a normal scope of these meetings. We look forward to continuing conversations with the board and administrators about positive avenues for resolving these matters. We, we want Murray County to be the best school district it can possibly be, and we appreciate your dedication, giving up your time in order to hear us out, and we also appreciate all the efforts that y'all do for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a correction, I believe Ms. Benefield meant Eric Parliament, not Eric Perryman. I don't believe he handles our... Yeah. Good evening. I'd first like to thank all of you for serving our students in our county and our schools as school board members. Teachers greatly appreciate all the time and thought you put into our schools and probably all the phone calls you get too. My name is Beth Fullerton. I've taught English in Murray County schools for 26 years, with quite a few of those years as a level 5 teacher. I teach every level of student that attends our school, from Inclusion English to English 2, and I started the pre-AP English program to help students get ready to meet the rigorous demands of our AP classes. I'm department chairperson on the leadership team, our social media director, and sponsor of the game club. I've also worked for the state as a core coach, training teachers to become Tennessee ready in both writing and informational text. And this past summer, I spent the past summer working for district to district as a content specialist who trained Tennessee teachers on how to increase rigor in their lessons using informational text. I tell you all this to say I have lots of experience with students in Murray County, and I'm very committed to improving education in this county and this state. Let me preface my remarks by saying the only reason I feel the need to speak up is frustration that I and my fellow teachers are feeling due to things that could easily be fixed. The first thing I'd like to discuss is software. Our county spent a great deal of taxpayer money on it. All of it promised us to be excellent stuff, top-notch, the best. And however, when we start to use it, sometimes it isn't as wonderful as the praise promised. One example of this is Power School. Our students will read a passage, then they're supposed to answer questions on that passage that address the standard the PLC group is working on at that time. However, there are typically only one question per standard for any of the passages. So, if we want to have, say, 5 questions on our formative assessment, or as I like to call them, the test to see if the kids learned anything this week, they must read 5 different passages. Now, there is the ability to write our own questions in Power School, but teachers have not been given the power to do this. Now, these are somewhat lengthy passages, and some of our students are slow readers. We only have 43 minutes in a class period now, so by the time you get every kid a computer, walk them through their login issues, and deal with that one computer that's not going to connect to the Wi-Fi, if the Wi-Fi is working correctly that day, then many of our kids can't finish reading all the passages so they can answer the questions that go with it in the time available. These questions often require careful consideration and rereading of the text. Sometimes multiple rereadings are required to grasp the meaning. Moving on to Mayan, it doesn't have sufficient books for high school usage. If we want to have them read on grade level, when we do use it, students will often just turn it on to read aloud to them and then ignore it. Just a couple of weeks ago, I listened as early elementary teachers pleaded for instructional resources for their classrooms to central office staff. Instructional resources for early elementary are the equivalent of textbooks in higher grades. I can only assume this hasn't been purchased because we're spending lots of money on personnel and other areas that I feel sure you're aware of. Keep in mind, we've been using all this great software that we were told would make our scores rise. You've seen our scores from last year, right? I propose that we create a teacher panel made up of all grade levels and all subject areas across the county to field test any software before it's purchased. That way, we will know if the purchase is a good use of our funding. I feel it's very important that our school system is a good steward with the money that has been provided by the taxpayers of Murray County, as well as state and federal dollars that we receive. And I'm not sure we've actually done as good of a job as we should have in the past couple of years. Also, in this race to make everything about software and web-based platforms, we've basically given students free rein with their cell phones. There are times when cell phones come in very useful in the classroom, but there are many, many more times when teachers across this county have to stop class to get a student who is taking the perfect Snapchat selfie to pay attention to instruction, a brief lesson, or participate in a class activity. When we do write them up per board policy, it takes 7 times before any real consequence happens. That's at least 7 times. They might play virtual pool against someone else in the classroom. That happens quite frequently. Or show free throws via, or shoot 3 throws, I'll say it right, or shoot free throws via text message instead of listening to the class discussion, or screenshot something to post in a group chat. Only one of those might be something that will help them be better students. Keep in mind that if a student is written up 7 times, there have surely been many, many more times that they used their phone in class where they didn't get caught. Having distracted students is terrible for their education. You've seen our test scores from last year, right? According to an article published in the Boston Globe back in June 2015, titled "Schools Seek Balance for Cell Phones in Class" by Linda Matchin, low-achieving students see a 14.23% gain in achievement when cell phones are removed from the classroom. This is an area that is ripe for growth on this year's test scores, if only we will act on it. I know teachers would sing your praises if you give them stronger cell phone regulations that strongly encourage students to stay off their phones. Another thing I'd like to discuss with you is teacher morale. I can't speak for every teacher, But I can say that in discussions with quite a few teachers across the county, they talk about how it is very demoralizing to find out that now our new administrators and central office staff can negotiate their salaries. Furthermore, teachers see only out-of-county people being hired in administration and at the central office, which makes our own Murray-grown educators feel like they don't have a chance to break into administration. There is concern that eventually these out-of-county administrators and central office hires will move on, possibly many close to at the same time. When they do, we as a county will be left with a shortage of seasoned administrators among our local faculties. When the MOU was broken, an email was sent stating that no teacher would be hurt by this. I unpleasantly found out that I'm going to have to work longer before I can retire from the classroom due to the decision not to send our money into TCRS that we earned in the previous year before the fiscal year was over. I have credit for teaching 12 months in TCRS, yes, but my salary is lower by 1 month's pay due to it being included on the new fiscal year. I'm in my 5-year window for retirement. My retirement is based on my 5 highest consecutive years of pay. Therefore, I'm going to have to work at least 1 year that I wasn't planning to work, so that I'll actually get my retirement based off my 5 years' highest salary that I earned. I've always given my best to this school system, and I'm very disappointed that I wasn't respected enough to have my benefits managed in a competent manner. I'm most definitely not the only teacher in this situation. I and other teachers around this county are still disappointed about what happened with last year's payroll disaster, particularly with the way it was handled by those whose jobs it was to take care of the issue in a timely and transparent manner. Since we're talking about morale, I'd like to talk also about something that's hitting many high school teachers hard, and that is this switch from block scheduling to a year-round schedule. Some schools are adapting to it well, but others are struggling greatly. High school used to be on a year-round calendar in the 1990s in Murray County, early 1990s. But back then, our classes were 55 minutes long instead of 43 minutes. We didn't live under the pressure of standardized testing. Our standards were nowhere near as rigorous. Our students and teachers are asked to perform on a level that people who graduated even 5 years ago will find much more challenging than what they saw in school. Back then, we didn't work in PLCs and give formative assessments. We didn't teach anywhere near as many students with IEPs, who must perform just as well on those standardized tests as the rest of our students. We didn't have to deal with cell phones in class. Our student code of conduct was much, much tougher. Thus, discipline was much, much better. We were not coming up with action plans to raise our test score, nor were we under as much pressure to make sure all students write so often. Teachers now must get all those essays graded and back to them, all while teaching them how to use a computer and other technology so they can do PBLs and meet the 7 keys, while we also concentrate on getting them to do well on state tests and meet the ACT benchmarks, if not do better. We also, in the early 90s, did not do all the retakes for tests that we do now, as well as remediation during the day and in the afternoon. I and my fellow teachers have always had to stay late and grade and come in on the weekend to grade because we were busy coaching or sponsoring clubs. But now we must do much, much more of that. It's almost impossible to get meaningful discussions in class during the shorter class periods because once you get the kids really into it, class is over. My class is less rich this year due to the lack of these discussions. It's almost impossible to regain the previous day's momentum. My students are suffering as well. This year, I have more honor students with low grades, sometimes failing, than I've had in the past. These are students who love school, and they excel in school. They're band students, athletes, members of student government, leaders in their school, and future leaders in their community. But they just don't have enough time to get everything done when they come in tired from football or band practice. I have one athlete who goes to sleep after he gets home and then wakes up at midnight to do his homework, then goes back to sleep around 3 a.m. until it's time for school. I have others who just don't get all their work completed, and others who aren't getting enough sleep. Almost all of them are very anxious about their performance. When I need to take time to counsel them about their grades, I can't get finished in one class period and see every child. Teachers' workload has more than doubled on this schedule. I went from teaching 75 students a day to teaching 166, which means I'm also grading that many essays and tests every single time I give one. And then we've had a terrible substitute shortage this 9 weeks, where I've lost my planning period at least once a week, if not more, because I must cover a class when there's no substitute, because we won't pay our subs enough money to keep them with us. This week, for example, I lost my planning period for the same reason on Monday and today. Speaking of today, we had 3 subs who canceled that they would attend, and we had 2 subs that just wouldn't show up. So yeah, it's discouraging. However, we still have work to do. Our kids still need to be taught and to do well on those state tests, no matter how challenging the higher-ups have made it for me and our county's teachers and our county principals to do our jobs. And as Forrest Gump says, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for listening to me. I only say this because I wish for our schools to be the best that they can be. Our students depend on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fullerton. We appreciate you. Do we have anybody for public delegations tonight? Anybody sign up? Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. White. Appreciate it, sir. Mr. Steve Smith.
Hey, good evening, Doctor. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. You've got, during public delegations, you got 5 minutes. And
Okay.
if you could please state your name and your address.
Okay, Steve Smith, my office address is 1122 Lebanon Pike, Nashville, Tennessee.
Home address. You have to be a resident of Murray County in order to speak for a public delegation.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I was speaking for a agenda item 14. Maybe I was misinformed. I apologize.
Unless a member of the board.
I did email with them because they were here for our work session, and because it went late, they had left, and
gotcha.
so they had asked to speak.
Okay, gotcha. If that's okay with the majority of the board?
The solid waste disposal bid.
Yeah. Is everybody okay? Shaking their heads? Please continue.
Thank you.
You're
for
very
letting me-
welcome.
I'll be brief, I promise. Thank you
okay.
again. I appreciate that. This evening on agenda item 14, you'll have the opportunity to vote on a contract for solid waste disposal. Here recently, the Murray County had issued a bid for a competitive bid process for those services.
Gotcha.
My company, Red River Waste, we're got a regional office there in Nashville. We're third-generation family-owned business. We have the majority of the households in Nashville for Metro. We also do services for other school systems and hospitals and things of that nature. So this is, certainly capable of doing this work. During the bid process, there were 2 bids, ourselves and the incumbent company. There's basically a $5 bid difference per haul between us and the incumbent company. I understand that there's a memorandum recommending that the incumbent keep the contract for the upcoming term. I just wanted to impress upon you all as a board the importance of the competitive bid process and then the difference in price and what that really is. We are, again, I just want to make sure that everybody understands we can do the work. We have contracts with hospitals where there's an urgent need, and if we're on the spot and we have other equipment close by, if an emergency comes across, or if you need 24-hour service, we can certainly accommodate that. But the bid difference between $300 and $275 doesn't sound like that much. It's only $5. But over the course of this entire contract, that's could be over $10,000 a year, so almost $30,000 over these 3 years of contract. And that's a big difference. That's $30,000 that could be spent in other areas. I'm sure, we've heard some things already tonight, and we'll see some more tonight about, salaries and educating young folks, and that's really what this Murray school system does. We can handle the job at a cheaper price. We can take out the trash, and you can use that money for other things. And I just want to press upon you that you would not be making a bad decision if you selected Red River Waste for that service.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it.
All
Thank
right,
you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question on that?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
I know that when staff presented the bids to us, they indicated that the reason why they had chose the other company was because of the 24-hour turnaround, because our trash compactors don't have a measurement on them, so we don't know when they're full, and if it starts overflowing, we need it taken away, like, right away.
Sure, and like I said, we have other contracts with school systems and hospitals that 24-hour turnaround period is not a problem at all.
Okay. So you're willing to adjust that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just a parameter guideline, just a rough timeline. You know, there was no parameters specified in the bid. So, well, I can say, I apologize, not adjust, I apologize. But I can assure you that the response time will be less than 24 hours. I mean, is that fair to say? Just, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Doctor.
it. Thank you, sir. Okay, so moving on down the agenda, the next thing we have is the election of a board chair. So I, at this time, would take nominations for board chair. Do we have a nomination? Yes, Mr. Pennings.
I nominate Ms. Parker as board chair.
Okay, so we have a nomination for Ms. Parker as board chair. Do we have any other nominations? Mr. Beaver?
No.
Oh, okay, got you. Threw your light on there for a second, okay. Do we have a second on that? Second for Mr. Beaver. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, sir.
I recommend Ms. Parker be elected by acclamation.
Vote to acclimate? Motion is made. Any nays? No? All right. Hey, Ms. Parker, I now turn the meeting over to you. Congratulations. You're welcome, ma'am.
Is that a pity lap? I mean, a pity clap? Just kidding. Mr. Beaver.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I'd like to see Ms. Parker move down here where the chairman always sit, up until just here recently. That way all the comments can be directed to the superintendent and to the chairman.
Do you just want you just want Ms. Parker to sit next to you? Okay, all right. Come on down.
I think it should be breaking up this. I object. Do not like this decision.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for your confidence in me. I really appreciate it and hope I can live up to it over this next year. But I do appreciate the chance to serve y'all in this capacity. Our next item is the election of a vice chair. Do we have any nominations? Mr. Beaver.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Ms. Kinzer for vice chair.
Wait, we have a nomination for Ms. Kinzer. Do we have a second? Mr. Atkinson seconded. Mr. Pennings?
I nominate Mr. Moore.
All right. We have a nomination for Mr. Moore. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All right. We have a second from Ms. Morency. Do we have any other nominations? Do we have any discussion on either of these nominations? All right, seeing none, we'll vote first on the nomination for Ms. Kinzer. I think so. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Atkinson,
Mr.
you've got it
Atkinson.
right. Yeah,
Actually, Mr. Pennings nominated Mr. Moore.
okay. Yeah. Take off the second one, just, yeah. we vote on the first
Yes.
one, and if that one fails, then we vote on the second one. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 to 3, and 1 abstention.
All right, the vote is 5-3 with 1 abstention. I believe we need 6, correct, Mr. Williver? So that motion did not pass, so we will move on to the second motion, which was the nomination of Mr. Moore as vice chair.
There you go.
Mr. Pennings.
Yes. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 yeas, 4 nays. That's it. No, we're on 2. Fails. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4 yeas. So no, still doesn't pass.
All right, that motion also failed. Do we have any other motions?
We need a vice chair. Do you want to elect somebody that's not here? Do we have to have a majority? You have to have 6.
Just somebody nominate Ms. Kinsey and I'll change my vote.
Can you go back over those?
We can go back to the first one.
Just no action was taken, so both of those motions are still back. I don't know if anybody else can bring this back.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to bring Ms. Kinzer back up.
All right. Motion, do we have a second?
Miss Kinzer. Miss Kinzer.
Ms.
Yeah.
Kinzer. Mr. Pennings seconded. Mr. Pennings.
Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 6. 7, 8.
Everybody. All right, that motion did pass. So congratulations, Ms. Kinzer. We'll now move on to the next item, which is the election of a chair pro tem. Do we have any nominations for that? Ms. Kinzer?
I nominate David Moore.
We have
I'll second that.
second, Mr. Moore. All right, so we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Atkinson? And just to clarify, that's Ms. Kinzer nominated David Moore. Everybody understand what we were voting on? All right. That motion passed. Congratulations, Mr. Moore. Moving right on down. Our next item is the election of a TLN representative. Do we have a motion for that position? It was Mr. Beaver.
I nominate Mr. Beaver.
All right. We have a motion and a second for Mr. Beaver to serve as the TLN representative. Seeing no lights, are we ready to vote?
You need to open it. You closed it. There we go.
That motion was not unanimous. Mr. Beaver did not want to be TLN representative. Just kidding. He's done a great job as it, so we're glad to keep him in that position. Our next item is the election of Sick Bank Caucus. I believe we need 2 members for that as well as an alternate. Do we have any motions for 2 members? Let's start with the 2 members for the Sick Bank Caucus. Do you want to? Mr. Beaver?
Could you kind of tell us what they do?
I believe Mr. Pennings and Ms. Martin were both on it, so I'll let them speak to what that includes.
We get a call or an email when they ask us to meet with them because some teacher has applied for extra leave, extra paid leave. And then we have to meet. We usually meet at 4:30 in the afternoon at central office. I've been on it 4 years. Joanna's been on it 4 years. And I don't know who the alternate. I think it's Ms. Morency's the alternate now. Yes, and it's. I believe it's a 4-year term. And Miss Amanda can. Yeah, 4-year term. You don't have anybody to take it. I will take it for another year if you, another 4 years if you wish.
Mr. Pennings nominating himself?
Well, I was going to nominate Ms. Morency for.
Another position? We need 2 of them. So why don't we have we have a motion from Mr. Pennings and Mr. Pennings seconds Ms. Morency. Do we have a second from Mr. Pennings? Sure. All right. So our motion will be to approve for our 6 bank trustees, Mr. Pennings and Ms. Morency.
And Mr. Atkinson as an alternate.
Do we have a second to that? Second. All right. Any discussion on that? All right. Seeing no lights, we are ready to vote. Sorry, that's kind of confusing on who was the second and who made the motion.
Do you want to do a roll call vote?
Yeah, it didn't get added.
You just want to do a roll call vote?
Can we do a roll call vote?
You can record my vote as yes, it hadn't come up.
All right. Ms. Martin? Yes, mine came up. Oh, okay. Sorry. Mr. Pennings, yes? Mr. Mr. Moore, Mr. Atkinson? Okay. I'm a yes. Oh, okay.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Everybody said yes. Yeah. Perfect.
All right, moving on. Staff reporting. It looks like Ms. Ventura is on here, but she did present at our work session. Does anybody have any further questions or care to see her presentation? All right, seeing no lights, we will move on to that. Thank you, Ms. Ventura. Our next item is our consent items. You'll have there the minutes, school trips, and use of facilities. Are there any items that anyone would like to have pulled? Do we have a motion to approve the consent items? Motion by Mr. Penning, second by Mr. Moore. We're ready to vote.
Non-instruction. Everything else was FYI except for
The last
academic
thing.
intervention funding. Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, how do you want to vote? Yea or no? Okay.
It was a yes for Mr. Pennings, if you'll record that, Ms. Shirley. So that passed unanimously. Moving on to new business. Our instruction items, item 13A1 through 13A5 were FYI items. Is there any question about those FYI items? Seeing no lights, we'll move on to item 13A6, which was not on our work session agenda. This is something that's come up recently. Who's going to speak to it?
I can go ahead and speak to that.
Okay. Turn it over to Dr. Marzak.
Thank you, ma'am. So if you look at the attachment, basically Dr. Woodard added in, we have identified several high school seniors who need additional classes and coursework in order to graduate on time. This is an effort to assist these students in meeting their academic goals. The most feasible option for course completion at this time would be for these seniors to complete the courses in Edgenuity via the online school. I'd like to, Dr. Woodard said, I would like to humbly request the cost of $21,250 from fund balance to account 141E7100-399 to cover the cost of the courses for Columbia Central High School and Spring Hill High School. And if we have any specific questions, Dr. Potts is here.
Mr. Beaver.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
the first question I have is, what's the difference in what you're recommending to use versus what we've been using in the past?
We've moved to you all have purchased a new credit recovery system, which we've moved to Edgenuity instead of the Play-Doh. So with this Edgenuity, in order to catch our kids up, this is why we're requesting for that money.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't know we bought one.
Yeah.
Okay, my second question is, how did these students, and how did they get to this point this late in the ball game without knowing that they have problems?
Some of it is because of scheduling. They didn't have room in their schedule to put a class. So, you've got required courses that you have to take. You've got so many periods in a day or blocks in a day, and that course won't fit in their schedule. So you've got to make it up somehow.
And also, we've got kids, especially with us, that have just moved into the area,
Right.
and their schools require different credits compared to what we require, the state of Tennessee requires, so therefore we have to catch them up with our credits.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Atkinson?
Are you talking about out-of-state students that come in, or?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, how many students do you think you have of that, out-of-state students?
How many out-of-state students do I have?
That's come in and needing this credit recovery?
I don't know. I would have to go back and look at my list. But I mean, we've had quite a few. I mean, last year we had students from, we kept track of it, 27 different states that came to our school.
Okay.
So you're looking at, 27 different, course requirements that they had that, to compare to ours.
Have we done this in the past?
Have we done this in the past?
Sorry, I didn't.
Have we done this in the?
Done what?
Have done what?
How much of the credit recovery have we done, like, yes?
Oh, we've always done
We've
it
always
in the
done it.
past, but it was with a different software system.
Okay.
How much did it cost with the previous software?
I couldn't tell you.
Sorry, Kristen, I didn't hear you.
I said,
How much did it
how much
cost?
for the previous software?
No idea.
Okay.
You're talking about Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have a clue.
Gotcha. Is this only, it looks like the requests are only for your two schools. Do we know if there's a need at any of the other high schools?
To our knowledge, there isn't.
All right. Mr. Moore?
So the other software was built into it? It wasn't extra? Because I don't remember approving something like this in the past. That's where I'm a little confused.
I mean, each package is different. I don't know what you all purchased. But with Play-Doh, we didn't have to ask because it was already included, I think. I don't know. I'm not positive.
And if this doesn't go through, what happens?
How many do you have?
I've got about almost 40 kids.
I have 30 kids that would not graduate.
Yeah.
Won't graduate. We can tell them
Basically.
today they're not gonna graduate.
And they would have graduated if you'd had the Plato software.
I don't know. I mean, I can't guarantee or say that they would,
I'm
yes or
not
no.
going that
But
direction.
the
No guarantee
majority,
that they would, that's for
Right.
sure.
Okay. But they would have had the tools in place to be able to theoretically graduate, is what you're saying?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The Edgenuity is just more of a rigorous type software than what the Play-Doh was.
That's opening up a whole nother can of worms I wasn't ready to talk about. If we're gonna talk about rigor. So we didn't purchase what we needed on the front end? I'm trying to get a hold of why this is, I mean, I'm not, again, I understand what you're asking. I'm just trying to get a hold of, did we not get what we needed when we purchased this software?
These, from what I understand, these are unique cases that need, they need this in order to be able to graduate on time. This, to my knowledge, from what I understand, has very little to do with the crossover from Plato to Edgenuity. From what I understand, these kids are unique cases that if we don't give them this opportunity, they won't be able to graduate on time. That's what I understand. Because what we're talking about is first time, in the state of Tennessee, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not allowed to do online credit recovery for first-time credit. This allows these kids to get first-time credit using the online system, hence the additional cost. Am I correct in stating that?
State that again.
I don't know
Are
if
you
I can
saying
state that
I know?
again.
If Roger White came from another state, needed personal finance, that the state does not allow you to,
Yeah.
I can't answer that.
I can't. I mean, it's for
confused.
first-time credit that they can, that they need.
Let me shorten this. Is there any
Okay.
way we can put this back to work session and talk about this?
Well,
If we don't get our
if
students assigned to a teacher real quick, it's just gonna be longer.
they're already 9 weeks behind,
They are.
and they've got to be linked to a teacher.
Have to be a link to a teacher to earn the credit. So somebody has to get paid.
For example, like
Earn
one,
credit.
for example, like Algebra 1, for one of our students to go through Algebra 1, they've got to put in 86 hours. That's 86 hours on the computer. Now, they can do it at home, and they can do it at school. But a lot of these will, we'll put them in for a period at school, but they've got to work on it at home.
I'd still rather talk about it again, so.
Yeah, when did you know these students wouldn't graduate?
Well, I mean, we keep track of them each year, and we try to reschedule them into the classes if we can.
So,
But sometimes it's just not possible.
well, let me rephrase it. When were you aware that they needed special intervention to graduate?
At the beginning of the year,
Because it wouldn't fit in their
it
schedule.
wouldn't fit. Or they moved
already
in.
has some required things, courses they need to complete.
My question is, if we knew at the beginning of the year, why is it first being brought up now? We've had several meetings before, work sessions and everything, and it's the first time I have heard about it. And I'm kind of like Mr. Moore, I'm starting my 10th year tonight, and I'm kind of confused because this is the first I've ever heard of something like this. I mean, I know we have intervention, I know we help students, but my two-part question is, I don't know why, and the second part of my question is, if you knew earlier, why weren't we informed earlier?
I think that you've got the realization of this regardless of what. It's come up because of the new software to some degree. We have to pay the software to use these courses. It's the first year that we've been in this situation. Now, you think about the negative impact that's going to make on our graduation date, on our graduation rate at both of these schools if we don't fund this. Now, it's my understanding, Mr. White, do you think that'll hold true, or will we have less than what you're really, I mean, is that what you think it'll be, 32?
Yes, ma'am, that's for sure.
That's for
The number
sure.
that we've given you is 100%.
And
Yeah,
40
we've got
at
our
your
numbers
school.
in.
Numbers are correct.
All right. So there's no other way for them to graduate, and they've got to have a teacher assigned, and I realize it's just coming to us, but I think you all just became aware of it, and Dr. Woodard then became aware of it, correct? And then here it is. So, and mentioned it, somewhere it's been mentioned to me that he was bringing it as if it had to be taken care of pretty quickly so that they could start their credit recovery.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me? So I move we accept this. I move
We
we
have a
fund
motion.
it.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'd like to ask a question. Okay.
Have it. We just need a second, and we can continue the
Okay.
discussion. Do we have a second? I'll second it.
Dr. Potts, you said you had 30 kids,
Around 36.
and you're requesting 5,000?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. White, you said you had 30 kids, and
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
requesting 16,000?
Multiple credits. One student might need more credits
Right,
than
than
we
others.
both may have the same number of students, but my student may need an extra course that hers does not. She may have a student that only needs one class.
Or
I may
half of
have
a class.
student that needs 2 classes. So that's
Okay.
why I'm more
That's why.
classes. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
And they may only need a half of a class.
Right.
So that differs with the money.
Okay, how does this, is it in line with what our policy says?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
I understand everything Ms. Kinzer said. I know we have to do this. We want our children to graduate. I would rather have them graduate and pay taxes than have me support them because they didn't graduate. I go back to my original question. I would just like to know, or I would like somebody to find out and report back to this board or to me why we did not know sooner. We're quite a ways into the school year. And this could have been brought up a long time ago, I believe, and we could have been aware of it and investigated it further. I'd appreciate that, thank you.
I think part of it has to do with that the program is so new that we're still learning the program and what's encompassed in it. And
We're learning daily.
every day,
Every day something new.
something new about it.
Thank you.
I'll make it quick. Dr. Marzak, could we talk about this at the next, or at a upcoming thing? There's a whole lot more questions, and I won't bore it tonight, but a lot of questions about this.
I
completely understand everybody's point of view. I definitely understand Ms. Kinzer's. At the end of the day, the students have got to graduate. We have to offer them the opportunity to graduate. That's not an option. We've got to, offer them the opportunity to graduate. The next thing is, I completely understand what Mr. Pennings is saying as far as the late in the game and everything like that. So your response to that is the fact that you really are not familiar with the system.
Correct.
I feel like our school system is implementing a lot of things, and from what Ms. Fullerton was saying, what you all are saying, we're continuing to hear that we have great things that are implemented that people don't know how to use and are not aware how to use yet. My issue is, if we fund this, is this something that we are going to make sure doesn't happen again next year? Are we going to get some training to make sure that everybody's aware of how to use new systems so things like this won't happen in the delayed sense? We've got a couple things, as Mr. Moore has said, that we need to discuss, but bottom line is they're going to need something to graduate, period.
I just want to say I will support this. I mean, they've got to graduate. The only thing is this Play-Doh, or is it called Play-Doh?
Ingenuity.
Well, the other one. that we
Yeah, it
used
was
to have.
Play-Doh.
The old one. Did it offer the same thing as Ingenuity is offering, or is it, this is something that's gonna cost us extra? We need to try to answer these questions later on in this, when we bring it back up to the work session.
So basically in Plato, if we needed Plato to provide a teacher of record, then yes, there would have been a cost associated with that. This is in order to provide a teacher of record inside the online system so that kids can be able to do coursework outside of school and get additional credit. That's what's happening here.
Dr. Marzak, do you recall how much Play-Doh costs versus Edgenuity?
I would have to report that back to the board.
Okay. It's my recollection that Play-Doh was a lot cheaper than Edgenuity, and we went with something that was supposed to have a lot of bells and whistles on it, which it sounds like it does, and rigor. But I kind of feel like we're getting nickel and dime by them too, and I'm a little concerned about that. I will say I made the second, and I do think we have to do something, but part of me is torn on this because we're about to go into fall break, and we have a work session on the 9th when we get back from fall break. And I don't know if we want to have a specially called meeting instead, but I really kind of would appreciate Dr. Woodard being here to answer some of these questions, or somebody here from instruction that can step up and answer these questions. So if there's someone here tonight that can answer some of these questions, but this is fund balance, this is savings account, and I'm not criticizing y'all. I know y'all are trying to solve a problem, and I know Dr. Woodard's trying to solve a problem, but we have a lot of requests tonight for fund balance items, and 21,500 or whatever, does that mean that we can't fund something else later on the Keys budget? Is really what it comes down to me.
Is it a time crunch situation for you all?
It is.
The sooner we get them going and
The
get 'em
better.
enrolled in the class, the better chance they have to graduate.
So you're going to get them enrolled tomorrow?
We can enroll them.
We can.
But we can't have fund balance be approved until it goes to the commission. Mr. Atkinson.
Well, the problem is, though, if we swap back to Play-Doh, you ain't gonna get the students graduating in time.
No,
So
I don't.
we're gonna have to do this this year. Next year, we need this information, try to figure it out.
All right. Any other lights? Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we are ready to vote on this. All right, that did pass unanimously, so thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't. I
It passed.
apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Moving on. I would say that I think we would like that to be on our work session.
Sure.
So I think that seems to be unanimous. Moving on, the next item is a request from the superintendent for a,
That was just an FYI.
Oh,
You
I'm
still wanna
sorry.
address it? Strategic plan.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Our next item was the strategic plan. Ms. McFarland did email everyone an updated version of that today. So I think our next item is town halls in
Yes.
October. Do you already have those scheduled?
Yes. So town halls will be October the, oh gosh, I thought I had it in my brain. Hold on. It's going to be the first 3 Thursdays in October, not including the fall break. So those dates are October the 12th, October the 19th, and October the 26th. Those will be at 6 o'clock. The first one is going to be at the Central High School cafeteria. The next one is going to be at Mount Pleasant Middle School in the auditorium. And the third one is going to be at the Spring Hill High School auditorium. And we're inviting all elementary schools, all unit schools, all middle schools. Come to any one of those that you want to come to. And those are the 3 that we'll be offering in the month of October. And that information is going to be sent out pretty soon.
Who's facilitating those?
I am.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions about the strategic plan? All right, moving on to other business. Item 14A, we had a request from the superintendent for a 3% raise. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Morency. Do we have a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Mr. Atkinson.
Dr. Marzak, you've done a great job. It's just a few things that's happened this past year, and that keeps coming back a little bit at a time. I can't support it right now, but if you bring it back towards the end of the year and we've got a good year, then I'll probably support it if we don't have any issues.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, it looks like we're ready to vote. Ms. Kinzer, do you want to record your vote? Oh, it came up. All right, so that motion did fail. Moving on, we'll go to work session, board meeting, day of the week. We discussed this in the work session, and we decided that on a trial basis in October, we were going to look at having our work session on the 9th, on a Monday instead of on a Thursday, and also the same for our board meeting, to have it on a Monday as well. We have a lot of board members that have conflicts on Thursday night with being able to watch their children play sports, and we wanted to be receptive to those concerns that have been raised. This will only be for October, I believe. I just wanted to, Mr. Penning.
I don't have any children, but that's Monday Night Football.
Mr. Atkinson.
I agree with the Monday nights, but these work sessions is going way too late. I like to see a cutoff point to where if we have to, we can add a second work session. That's the only thing I've got. And as far as Monday Night Football, you can hang that up. It's about over with for them.
Ms. Martin?
I agree with Mr. Atkinson on the length of the meeting. 6 to 10 is cool. After 10 o'clock, I'm turning into a pumpkin. I have to be, we were hitting 10:45, I don't have children. I don't see how you guys are doing this that have families that have to go home to. It's inappropriate. I don't feel like it's not efficient after a while. Where everybody's hungry, they're hangry, if things are happening, after, the Snicker bar's not gonna get it. I think, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we're going past 11 o'clock, it's just, I don't feel like it's appropriate. And that's why I left last time. Unfortunately, TCAT is closed on Columbus Day, so I won't be in town for the 9th.
Mr. Pennings?
Is there some way on these work sessions, I know we have to publicize our meetings, that we could publish it where the meeting will go to 10 o'clock and be notified if we have the rest of the meeting the following day or something like that?
I think what we discussed in the meeting, and I'm certainly agreeable to, is that we would go to 10, and then if we needed to, it could spill over into the next Monday was what we talked about. I think actually on the 16th, we have an event already scheduled, so we would probably have to do it after that event. But we have been having some long meetings, and we recognize that, and anything we can do to try to make these meetings shorter, I think we're all for. Mr. Moore?
Okay, I'll just say two things on that. Just everybody needs to remember that the reason we went to this format was because we were having multiple meetings that were still going long. So even though it is one evening that's going kind of long, I don't like it very much myself, but it is preferable to having to come multiple evenings and do it several times. That said, just as a reminder to everyone that there's really two ways to make these meetings run faster, and that would be for us as board members and for the staff as well, to be better prepared for the meetings, have any questions asked, have your information ready. And that just requires a little extra work from all of us, myself included, to make sure that we're prepared for the meeting so that we are not having to seek out additional information and get straight to the point. And I think we'd also discussed possibly looking at we tried to do some timed meetings. I know with the naming committee and the rezoning, or I don't know what you call it, rezoning, I think we're calling it redistricting meetings. We're running those as timed meetings with a defined endpoint and some checkpoints along the way, and that seems to be working for the most part pretty well. So maybe we need to, maybe the superintendent can get with staff and look at a way to organize these meeting agendas in such a way that they're a little more structured along a certain timeline to help us keep things moving. But again, it's going to take the part of all of us as board members to keep it moving and do our parts.
Mr. Oliver, do we need to take any action or anything? Okay. I think we all know where we want to go, where we want to get to. It's just a matter of how we get there. We are just doing this on a trial basis, and appreciate the feedback that we got at the work session and the feedback that we're getting here tonight, and we're going to do our best to try to make sure that we adhere to that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next item. Which is diploma. Mr. Carver?
In the work session, I shared with the board that there's a diploma footprint in each one of the campuses, and that we're getting, with the board's blessings, we're getting ready to open up and continue the process of rolling out more computers to students. Dr. Marzak, the amount we're requesting to money was
It's on the keys. It's 850,000.
850,000. To this point, what is really great is that throughout the district, teachers and students are wanting to embrace technology and bring more technology into the classroom. And I don't know if the instructors are here or not, but one of the things that's been neat is that teachers are teaching teachers on how to use the technology effectively in the classroom. So my ask ask of the board is that you would, as I've said before, give me as much money as you give me, and we will continue to move the diploma process forward. I did want to make mention that I've taken the position that we've stopped with the Chromebooks and we are buying the Lenovo 11E student devices. We're doing that for the upper grades. There are some instances in which the recommendation has gone forward to purchase iPads for the lower levels, the preschool kindergartners, because they're having to do some online assessments for that, some portfolio work. I met with the Lenovo representatives today to see if they had a like project or a product that we could be looking at. And Mr. Schuyler was there with me, as well as another representative from the tech department. We're hoping to get some kind of tablet device that we can at least start looking at. So that's part of our strategy going forward. The other thing is going back to the Chromebooks, and it's for the audience here. On the Chromebooks, we will buy Chromebooks for the existing inventory if there is an insurance policy on it. So if we have a Chromebook that gets broken, we will replace it Chromebook for Chromebook because there's an insurance policy on it. Any new purchases we're targeting the Lenovo 11E, basically because it has a greater durability, there's a greater resale. Remember, we are leasing these devices with the intent that at the end of the lease that we would make them, we'd look at options for migrating to the next platform, and then if the current inventory would be, we'd either let the company take it back, or we would maybe work it together where patrons of the district can purchase devices that are 3 to 4 years old. That's where we're at. And I apologize I didn't go up to the mic. Hopefully you all can hear me, and I would entertain any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Carver? Thank you, Mr. Carver.
Thank you.
All right. Item 14D was our board self-evaluation results. That's an FYI for us. If there's no lights on, no discussion, we'll move on to community relations. And we have received something from Ms. Power, so I'm going to turn it over to her to talk about that event.
Thank you, Chair Parker. Everyone's got a sheet in front of you. I think, well, it'll let you know about an event on October 16th where the school board's inviting our legislators as well as our county commissioners and business people in the business community are welcome to come to talk about, to talk about what we choose to talk about. Denny has been serving as our TLN representative, and so we discussed a couple of questions for talking points. What are you looking for in a workforce? What do we need to make Murray County grow? So if anyone has any input, please give it, and we can change this. Otherwise, we'll start circulating this to the county commission. They are aware of the date, but we'll let them know the details as well as business community. Any feedback?
And you've actually already reached out to the legislators at the state level, correct? And they're
Mr. Bieber
planning on
has.
coming.
And
Sounds good.
And additionally, Central High School's culinary department is going to do the food. And thanks to Dr. Marzak for his generosity in funding that. Since our budget is 0, it did not cut it. So anyways, any comments, suggestions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powers and Mr. Bieber, for heading that up, and we will look forward to that on October 16th. Hopefully we will not have a continued work session afterwards. We'll move on to policies. We have several items that are listed in your packet that are for final adoption. Do we have a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Pennings. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Kinzer. Any discussion about any of those items for final adoption? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. That motion did pass. We'll now move on to policies that are to be posted the required amount of time. I would like to pull policy 3.210 out for discussion purposes, but I would make a motion that we approve the remaining policies, policy 1.704, policy 5.117, and policy 6.2011. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Powers or Mr. Pennings. Any discussion about those? Mhm. Yes. The naming policy. Mr. Atkinson, I think they were deleting one, and they were adding in that policy 1.901 is the rationale. For clarification, in the rationale, policy 1.704 is actually being deleted, and we're actually replacing with policy 1.901 is what it says in our rationale. Mr. Pennings, do you want us to record your vote? Yes. Mr. Pennings was a yes. All right, that motion did pass. The reason why I pulled policy 3.210, when we discussed this at the work session, the first part was included. There was an addition that came to my attention when we talked about whose name would be on the plaque. We didn't include the county mayor's name, and I think that was just an oversight of the committee. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood the changes that we were making, which would be that in the event of a new school, that could come, the naming for that could come to us before the June meeting, as an exigent circumstance if need be. And then also I'd like to see us add the county mayor's name to the plaque that would be for new schools. And I'll put that in the form of a motion, those changes. Do it. All right. Have a motion by Mr. Pennings. Second by Ms. Morency. Oh, sorry, wait, we have, Mr. Moore's got some discussion.
Do we have to have this approved now, or can we wait another month? I know we've delayed. There's just some more things every time I pull this back up and I'm looking at some things. It's pretty, if you look at and the only reason this came up is since we've started the kind of operating with this with kind of our naming committees, they're kind of, the way it's worded made sense, but it's a little restrictive if you really get into the particulars of it. It says it must consist of up to 2 board members. It must consist of a prospective parent. I mean, it just gets kind of.
This would be to have it posted.
Okay.
And so it would be back on our agenda next month for final adoption.
I'll tweak it again.
And we could tweak it at that time. Any further discussion? All right, we're now ready to vote.
My vote's yes. Penny, did you vote?
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so that, Ms. Powers, did you vote? Okay.
My vote is yes. It's showing up here. Do you not see it?
Cool. No, it's just waiting. It's
Sorry.
okay. It'll register as yes. Okay.
I'm a yes.
All right, so that motion did pass. We also have on our agenda the annual board review of policy manual items. There's several listed that come up this month. Is there any discussion on any of those? Seeing no lights, we can move on. We can move on to the next item, zoning and facilities. I think I'll just turn it over to Stan on this.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. And I'm not sure how you want to proceed. I assume that you want to address the first item on its own and not get into the others. During the special called work session on September the 9th, we presented to you the plans for the new elementary school and middle school. Of course, the plans for the elementary school are much more finished than the ones for the elementary school, but at that time told you that Hewlett Spencer would be presenting tonight for your approval a site package for both of those schools in order to get the work going to be able to get done before rainy weather starts, which would allow them to meet the schedule for a August 2019 opening. We received that today based on the bids they have given us. We emailed that to you and posted it to the packet today. And what we are recommending is that we approve Hewlett Spencer for the site work for the new elementary school at a cost of $4,267,053, and the middle school at a cost of $2,660,452 for a total of $6,927,505 once those funds are received from the bond issued for this project, which we expect in the next couple of weeks. These will become a part of the final GMP that will be presented on the elementary school. The goal right now is to present that in December and the middle school in April for approval. So these numbers will become a part of that final. This is just to grade out the site to build those two schools. And Mr. Spencer is here to help answer any questions.
Does that pricing fall in line to what we was looking at to begin with?
Yes, sir, it does. The pricing that we've got, we continue to be on the budget that has been set. The funding's been given of $65.5 million for the two schools. Yes, sir.
Motion by Mr. Atkinson to approve this site work. Second by Mr. Moore. Any further discussion? And just, Mr. Wolver, this is all contingent upon the bond, because this is kind of out of how we normally do things, because we usually have the bond kind of already in place or plans approved and things like that normally, correct?
Well, yes, ma'am. Normally, the funding would be in place once we made the approval, but the reason we're asked to do this is to be able to not have to wait through the next board meeting cycle, which would put us a month behind on the dirt work once the bond funds are approved.
That's aligned with my question. So timeline-wise of when this would actually start to need to be spent, or when dirt starts getting moved, I guess was my question.
We would issue a PO, and along with their contract is in here in your packet as well. Based upon your approval, we would sign the contract, but we would not issue that to them until we could issue a PO, which means when the bond funds are in place. So that could be, and I apologize, I have tried to get information from the county and was not able to get when they think that bond, but I understand it's next week is when the bond is supposed to be.
I guess my question was, my hesitancy is the middle school piece, since that's a little further off for when we would be actually voting to approve the school. And I guess we would be spending money to do dirt work, and could potentially, should we decide not to approve that, not be spending money for the middle school.
A bond was issued to build an elementary school and a middle school. I guess I'm a little bit confused on that.
We're really good as a board at making decisions that confuse people.
Okay.
I'm just planning ahead, because it's a lot of money to spend on something that were it to show up that we didn't do that. Was wondering when that would actually be spent.
Yeah. Again, these
I'm
funds.
trying not to throw you a huge
Yeah.
curveball on this.
Well, I think the anticipation is they would start breaking ground on both these projects within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so the
That's
money
fair
would be
enough.
spent. Does that answer the question you're asking?
Yes, I guess this is more for consumption of everyone to realize that if we start down this road, we're starting down the road pretty much with this vote. So people need to understand that that's what we're doing.
In answer to your question, Madam Chair, I got this afternoon. This is out of order from what we typically do. Typically, the bond money would be there when we approve the GMP. So I will get with Hewitt-Spencer's counsel and make sure that we make provision for that in the event the bond fell through, that you would not be obligated to this. So we will address that in the contract.
Do we need to do anything as far as the motion to include that it's contingent upon the bond?
If you'll just
Amend.
pass the motion subject to my approval of the contract. That way I can
Okay.
get that language in there. Like I said, this is unusual because usually the money is sitting there. But we'll take care of that. We'll make sure that out is there. As I understand it, the bond issuance has been approved by the county, it just hasn't been issued yet. So just an additional out in case something falls through.
Yeah, October 3rd. Yeah. Tuesday. Would you be
Are you, are you agreeable to having the motion?
I'll amend the second.
Okay. So the motion is to approve it contingent upon Mr. Woolever's approval of the contract. All right, any further discussion on this? I guess I would just clarify, Mr. Breeden, just because we're approving this, though, doesn't mean we're approving the designs that have currently been in place for these two schools, correct?
These pads are being built based on those designs. It's my understanding, and Mr. Spencer may want to address this, that they can be adjusted. I mean, it's basically grading out a site pad. We're not starting any building of a building, is that correct? And so that final decision would be when you approve the GMP price for the building.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. All right, that motion did pass. We'll move on to bid number 18-015, carpet in the auditorium at Spring Hill High School. and Whitthorne's Library and Lab.
Yes, ma'am, and since I was unable to attend the work session, I know you all had the opportunity to discuss several of these bids. Do you want to talk about them individually, or we can address, are there any questions about them, or?
So you want to go through, have us look at approving all the bids?
If that's the way you would want to do it, we've got bid 18015, the carpet for the auditorium at Spring Hill High School and Whitthorne Middle School Library and Lab. The routine maintenance and inspection of chillers is 18-021. What's the net? I think that's the only two bids that we have on here. We do have the approval of the quarterly purchase order for GCA, since you did only approve that one quarter at a time, so we can issue the purchase order for the second quarter. But however you prefer. You want to do those first two bids and then get to the next thing? I mean, however you want to do that.
Do we have a motion to approve the first two bids? Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Ms. Kinzer. Any discussion on those two bids? Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote.
It's going to be 18-015 and 18-021.
Mm-hmm. If you go to the zoning and facilities tabs, where you should see it's open. All right, that motion did pass unanimously. We'll move on to the GCA quarterly purchase order. Are there any questions for Mr. Breeden about that? That was based on our instructions previously.
We actually are, we've implemented a new system with the scorecard. We've included as part of the new scorecarding process we're doing for operations. So we actually are, we have received our end of August grading by our principals and our building operators. We just sent out an email Monday for the second round of that. We did get a good response the first time. We are still in the process of accumulating those. What I hope to do is bring you a report on that in October, once we have 2 months worth. So we plan to bring you a report and update on here's what the scores have been for the first 2 months.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve that purchase order? Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Seeing no lights, we are ready to vote. That motion did pass. Moving on to the MOU with the City of Spring Hill. I believe that's something that our attorneys worked on. Mr. Moore?
I just had a question.
Okay. Go.
I'm reading through this, and am I missing that where it really doesn't say what they're paying? I mean, I see that they're willing to pay for the design cost, but beyond that, I don't see where they're agreeing to anything else.
If they don't go forward with the project, then they have the option to buy the property at $1.1 million.
Okay, but I guess on the flip side of that, I'm not seeing where they to choose to go forward with the project. I don't see where they're responsible for the cost. Am I missing that part?
Yeah, that would be a joint operation. You guys would have to approve the plans. And
Okay.
they would fund the road.
I guess I'm not seeing where wording that, if somebody could point it out to me, maybe I'm missing it, wording that says that they're gonna fund the actual bridge and road.
Should we choose to do that? My internet connection dropped off, I apologize. Give me just a second.
I mean, I see where it says they'll assume ownership, but it doesn't say where they'll assume cost of the build.
So the city will pay the cost related to such design. In the event city determines project's not feasible, then the city may purchase. So
But there's no, again, I'm not a lawyer, but there's no language saying they're paying for the road.
no, they either have to pay for the road, or purchase the property. I mean, that's, the board would have to agree one way or the other.
I would ask that we have some language that's a little more clear about that. I understand that's the intent, but it's just not there.
We had that in the original agreement. It was very clear that they didn't want that. What they wanted was something that said that, okay, they'll be obligated to pay the design work.
Okay.
And then at the end of that, they'll either build a road or buy the property. They just wanted some guarantee that if they paid for the design and found out that the road was not feasible, that they still had the option to go in and buy that property.
And I'm agreeable to that. I'm not seeing that either or written out in here at all. I'm just not seeing any language that says that they are going to fund the road or buy it. I see language, what you're saying, that they have a choice to purchase it at the appraised price, but not that the other option would be for them to fund it. So I'd like to see that written in there.
What you got is a situation where they're obligated to fund, or they're obligated to purchase the property if they choose not to go forward on the road. I can do that. I'll be happy to do that. I can make it as clear as you want it to be, but I don't know that they're gonna agree to that. We tried that to start with, but what we wanted them to do was go ahead and design the road and see if it was going to be feasible, because there was that cost issue. This was the negotiated product. This was the result of Stan and I sitting down with Mr. Lay and their attorney to be able to work through the process. I felt like it was a good compromise to at least give them enough to go forward with the design of the road. I'll do whatever the board wishes me to do. I can put that either or in there. I don't know that they're gonna agree to it. And I think that is gonna set you back for another cycle, because if we pull out at this point, then they're gonna have to start their process over as well, and that's fine, but just, I'll do whatever the board wishes me to do.
Ms. Morency?
Did they annex this property?
It's in the process. We filed the petition to annex. It is passed along, and I think one day next week they're meeting, and that will be the vote that then puts it back to the BOMA to vote finally to annex. So I anticipate that'll take place in the next month.
So, does this MOU depend on whether they annex or not?
No.
So how could,
Nothing in the MOU would obligate them to annex.
but if it's not part of this, if the property isn't part of the city, why would they build a road on it?
Or why would they buy it, for that matter?
Exactly.
So I agree. I think I think it will be annexed. I don't see any reason why they won't.
Okay, all right.
Let me just add, we've been told that annexation is the key to us to being able to connect to the utilities for the schools. So if they don't annex, we can't connect to the utilities. So we don't have water and sewer for our schools. So we have not, I don't think there's been any question about them annexing. I don't think there's any issues with that. We received very favorable review in their meeting earlier this week.
So, Mr. Breeden, should we have also made the site work conditioned upon annexation?
Well, I mean,
otherwise,
I can assure you, we're not gonna move forward if they don't annex the property, yeah. I mean, that's,
It just seems like we're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. And, I mean, I understand that there's no reason that they wouldn't, but
yeah, the key is, I think what we're trying to do in order to move forward, they wanna know how much the road's gonna cost. It's $100 to
Understandably.
design, $100,000 to design it, to find that out.
Mhm.
They're willing to pay that $100,000 if we're willing to say, we will give you the right to either build the road or buy the property.
But even that is going to depend on whether they annex it or not. So we won't know until they take the vote.
Yeah, it won't be annexed until they take that final vote.
Right.
Okay.
But
Mr. Moore, if I could, to go back to your initial concern, I think it was the board's desire that they purchase this property. I mean, it's about half of what they were purchasing is wetlands, the other half is actually buildable property. But I don't know that you could sell it for what they're offering, because I don't know that anyone else could use all the wetlands. So I don't think that either or really was that big a concern, at least on our side. Either they're gonna buy the property from you or they're gonna build the road. But I don't know that we needed it necessarily spelled out in the MOU, if that makes sense. If that was more for their benefit as a protection, that they were going to either build the road and get the property for what it cost to build the road, or they were just gonna buy the property outright.
Mr. Atkinson?
This don't state at all whether they're gonna buy it or not, does it? It doesn't. It leaves us open too, don't it, for us to say no or yes?
It's not a contract.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
It's basically an agreement to try to come to an agreement down the road. But there is enough language there that I think would protect the city in the event that it did design the road and you all completely backed out, and we might have an issue. And I'll be honest, even though the MOU doesn't, it specifically says it's not a contract and it's not legally binding, if they start down that proverbial road, or a bad pun there, but they start down that road, begin the design and expend those funds, and then you just change your mind completely, then they might have some legal grounds.
Madam Chairman, if I
Yes.
could, Mr. Spencer was at their meeting on Monday night when they reviewed annexation and reviewed our site plans. And if you would like to hear from him, I wasn't there, he was there, so he might be able to add to this.
Madam Chair, I can add one nugget of information for the confidence on the annexation. I was there representing the board Monday night at the work session. There is a 100-acre farm just south of our property that has already been approved for annexation. So we're sort of in the middle. It's pretty much a green light from everything I could tell at the meeting. There were no high-level questions about it. It flew through with absolutely nothing. So knowing that the property south of it and leaving our track in the middle of all their annexation, then there's our track, and then they just approved this one, it's just probably guaranteed to go through. Just wanted to add that information.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. I would just say that while it does seem like we're going down this path, I still feel like there's lots of things that are still kind of out there, whether it's the bond actually being issued and us having $65 million in the bank to, you know, I would hate for them to start on tomorrow and sign a contract for design services, and then we find out that we, you know, for some reason, we don't approve the plan for the elementary school or the middle school in a timely manner, and they're sitting on a design for an for the road, that if we don't build both those schools, I don't know that they have a lot of reason to want to build that road right now. I just feel like there's still some unknowns for us as a board. We do not have a motion at this time. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Moore, and that'd be fine. I'm sorry, that motion did pass. We're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene at about 8:15. Motion. Motion. Second. Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Pennings or Ms. Kinzer. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Ms. Powers. All right, that motion did pass. Moving on, projected utility savings. You can see the recommended motion from staff. Do we have a motion related to that? Motion by Mr. Moore to approve what, second by Mr. Pennings. Any discussion about that? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion passed as well. Moving on, soil testing at the new Spring Hill Elementary School. There is a recommended motion on that. Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion did pass. Moving on, Culleoka Unit School Project Lead the Way Classroom. I believe there's been a resolution to that, so we can move on to the next item, which is the bond premium allocation list. I'll turn it back over to Stan for this one.
It is my understanding that there's the potential for a $5 to $9 million bond premium. We've been notified by County Commission, I think, of that. And so Dr. Marzak and I had met based on some feedback that the board had given on suggestions on if there were. And so we were asked to put together a prioritized list. I think we've been asked to bring them that, a recommendation from the board on, is that Monday, Dr. Marzak? Monday night to the commission, if there is a bond premium, how you would recommend that be used. Our recommendation to you is, and again, not knowing exactly how much it is, we put a list together for the full $9 million. The first amount of that is additional parking for Spring Hill High School of $250,000. We know that the parking lot there is not adequate. There's a little over 300 spaces. Talking with Dr. Potts, they do not have enough parking to give all of their licensed drivers a parking spot at the school. Second thing is the cafeteria kitchen addition. Originally, we had brought you a recommendation with the budget last year, and I've got that number right here somewhere. I can pull it up. But it's a little over, it's about $8.5 million for an addition to Spring Hill High School that would have included the cafeteria, kitchen, a new auditorium, and an addition to the library. Because we know that there may not be enough funds to do that and some of the other things that we put on this prioritized list. This is not anything from our builder or architect, but basically took a square footage number and kind of guesstimated that we're probably looking around $4.5 million just to build a new kitchen cafeteria. It might be, I will just tell you, it might be less than that. I don't think it'll be more than that. And I'm speaking for a builder now, which I probably don't have any right to do. But I feel like that would be a budget to be able to get that done. We do already have overcrowding issues there with the cafeteria. I actually was there during lunch period on one day this week, Tuesday, I think. And there were kids from the cafeteria sitting in the floor lined up all the way down to the office for lunchtime because Mr. Beaver was there. He and I both witnessed that. Pretty full. That's at their current enrollment of about 1,150 students. There are projections that show they have classroom space, and again, Dr. Woodard is not here this evening. He's at a very important meeting with his wife tonight, where she is nominated for Teacher of the Year. No? She won Teacher of the Year for the state of Tennessee. So very important for him to be there. But I know he is working on taking the formulas that Dr. Register used, went back and did a classroom count, and depending on what kind of ratio, Dr. Register used a 30-to-1 ratio and showed over 1,600 students that could be accommodated based on the classroom space. Dr. Woodard has taken a 24-to-1, a 26-to-1, a 28-to-1, and it's in the 1,300s at 24-to-1, in the 1,400s at 26-to-1, and in the 1,500s. So as we know, we've got a growing enrollment there. We do know that we can accommodate some additional students. Again, I guess Dr. Woodard will be coming back to you, look for direction at what kind of ratio are we wanting to use for classroom space. Of course, the state maximum is 30-to-1. I think that's what funding is based on and those kind of things. But anyway, adding this cafeteria will put us in a good position where we are and allow us to accommodate some growth there, anywhere from an additional 200 to 400 more students. The next thing on this list, we had brought you earlier a list that we had already gotten bids from Train for some HVAC issues that we have that we do not have funded in the EMG funds we have currently. The total amount of those is $306,000. It's for chiller repairs at Mount Pleasant Elementary School, the amount of $16,000, boiler replacement at Mount Pleasant High School at $260,000, and HVAC replacement in room B102 at Spring Hill High School in the amount of $30,000. So that's $306,000, and then the remaining amount, we took the list of first-year EMG repairs that were in the $29 million list, but not in the $16.5 million list that remained unfunded. We prioritized that. We basically eliminated any kind of there's some of the things that were ADA, and as we talked to you before, ADA requirements if the school was built before 1992. We do not have a requirement to bring it up to code unless there's a place where we're not able to reasonably meet. And we don't have any issues. We feel like it'd be better to address those issues one at a time instead of across the board, go in and retrofit all of our schools for that. We also took out some cosmetic things like floor tile and ceiling tile, which we would like to do. But again, we felt like those were a lower priority in some of these. So we got that list down to this $3,896,000, and we've attached a list with those schools and where that work is being recommended to be done.
Of course, none of that list, that prioritized list on this money goes back to the original EMG list you've got prioritized, right?
That's right. Actually, if you'll remember, the first year list was $29 million. We brought you that last year, and we brought 3 different options, 29, and the board chose to ask the commission to fund 16.5 of that. So this is nothing that's in that 16.5. It's the remaining of the 29. So we prioritized the remaining, there's about 9,000 that's still unfunded, because we've been able to take care of some of the things already, but there's about a 9 million that still remains unfunded, and we prioritize that 9 million down to this list.
And the cafeteria growth, if we build onto the cafeteria, that's gonna take care of the problems we've been having with kids eating in the floor.
We do. That will
so-called.
give us more space for that. We also not only have problems with the cafeteria seating, but we do not have a large enough serving area, and do not have a large enough cafeteria really to prepare food. We really need a bigger kitchen, serving line, and cafeteria.
And we'll be able to pull in 200 to 400 more students, right?
Yes, sir. That would be the intent.
Mr. Breeden, since the prioritized list goes up to almost $9 million, what are you going to do if they decide that they're only going to do 5?
We tried to list it in the order that we thought was priority.
Okay, so if it was just 5 million, then the outstanding HVAC issues and the EMG repairs would potentially be cut.
They would still need to be done, but we would be seeking possibly to take, I know everybody wants a little piece of that fund balance, but we've not yet made any requests from you for operations or capital repairs.
Okay,
We'd prioritize it some more.
okay. Mr. Pennings?
Excuse me, you say you can add 200 to 400 students at Spring Hill. Have you considered that you might have to add onto the parking lot for teachers and student parking?
Yes, sir, and that's what the $250,000 would do. That would give us 200 more parking places there. So we think that would be enough to accommodate that growth.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I just wanted to, and this came out when we were talking about the other night. I believe you guys had said that Spring Hill High School was only originally designed for like 800 students. The cafeteria was. So that's part of the problem we're at now. We're currently sitting at like 1,100 students in the cafeteria. It was originally designed. I think you guys said
Yes, sir, it was from the original building. The building's been added on 2
and
times.
then a wing was added, and they never
the building was
added on
added, but
the
they never
cafeteria.
enlarged the
Okay.
cafeteria. That is correct.
All right. Do we have a motion? Oh, do we? I think so. The allocation list as indicated by central office? All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Morency. Any other discussion? Oh, I'm sorry.
And I want to follow up with Chair Parker's question. But I guess the assumption is, and it's a valid point, clearly if this goes to the county commission, they choose a different dollar amount, well, I guess we would relook at this, or you guys.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. I mean, it'll
based on
ultimately be
whatever
your decision.
dollar figure
That's
they
right.
give us.
Yes, sir.
I mean, because even if it's less than that, we'd have to look at a completely different. I know you guys said those two were the top priority, but maybe they only give us $3 million, and we would really have to look at how to redo it. So.
And we'll go back and put together
Okay.
another list and bring it back to you.
And just to clarify, Mr. Williver, the bond, and we had some discussion about this before, but the bond that the county has approved is specific to the Malin Moore property, but this bond premium could be used at Spring Hill High School?
That's what I understand, that it could be used for any school purpose. If it's a Title 49 bond, so yes, it would be available for other uses.
Okay. Does everyone understand that? All right. Seeing no other lights, we're ready to vote. That motion did pass. Moving on, we have instructional low bid items. Is there any discussion about any of those, or can we take those all as a whole? Motion to approve all items under 15H. All right, motion by Ms. Kinzer, second by Mr. Moore. Seeing no lights, I believe we're ready to vote. All right, that motion did pass. Moving on to operations, low bid. First one is the solid waste disposal bid.
May I speak to that,
Sure.
please? I know Mr. Smith came before you, and we appreciate always anyone who wants to come and speak to those. We always try to notify any bidders of when the bids will be presented. He was told when the work session would be. And again, I apologize to him in the hallway, and I apologize to you for interrupting. However, there were three elements of the bid. One was the amount per haul, the amount we were going to charge per ton for the trash to be hauled, and the third one was the response time, because we only have one compactor per school. When it's full. Until it gets hauled away, the trash has to pile up on the ground around it. The reason that we bid this is our current vendor for this is Murray County Solid Waste. They did not submit, neither of these vendors who submitted a bid are our current vendor. It's currently serviced by Murray County Solid Waste. We began to experience some pretty big increase in charges last year. We got in contact with them. They had made some changes in their pricing structure. They called us and recommended that we ought to seek other, and also not only was our price going up, but also they were having trouble servicing and getting there to pick it up. So that's why we made that a part of the bid process, because we were waiting sometimes days. And what happens, the trash was piling up, and our maintenance department was having to go haul it, put it in trailers and haul it off. And so they contacted us and said, we think you need to seek another company to do this. And so we put together a bid package specifically with those three things. First of all is the haul bill, and one of the reasons we specifically asked for that is Murray County Solid Waste has a minimum charge for 10 tons. So if our compactors hold 12 tons, but sometimes we'll send it off with 5 tons in it, but they still charge us for 10. So that's why the costs were going up so absorbently. So we wanted to say per haul, this is what the charge is, then it's so much per ton, whether it's 1 ton in the compactor or 12 tons in the compactor. And then very important to us is the response time. We did receive 2 bids, and I'll have to pull those up here on the screen. Hang on just a second. We did receive 2 bids on that. And one of those, as Mr. Smith told you, from Red River Waste Solutions, and the other one was for Waste Solutions of Tennessee. Red River Waste Solutions, he mentioned, I don't remember the address, is in Nashville. Waste Solutions of Tennessee is based in Columbia. Their bid amount per ton was the same. However, their bid amount per haul, it was $295 for Red River Waste Solutions and $300 for Waste Solutions of Tennessee. Red River did say a 36 business hour haul response time. Waste Solutions said within 24 hours. We figure that we have 1 to 2 times a month per school that we empty their compactor. So, and we don't do that very much in the summer. So basically for 10 months, so that means we're dumping between 200 and 400 times a year. So that would be, the difference in the bid was between $1,000 and $2,000 for the entire year. We felt like that the better bid for us, with no little difference in cost than that, was the 24-hour, the commitment to the 24-hour time. Now, I know he spoke to that, but legally, I don't think we're allowed to accept that once the bids are open. We have to go from, so I just have to advise you that we're supposed to go from what the bid documents say, and I think that is correct, right, Mr. Wolver?
That's right. I mean, that was one of the key aspects of the bid, and I don't think it would be fair to allow that to be changed now. I think that would create a problem.
Mr. Pettings?
Well, whether it was legal or not, I think it's worth a little bit of money to keep what we're doing in Murray County with a Murray County business, instead of going out of county, letting somebody else have our money.
Do we have a motion? Motion to approve what was recommended? All right. Second by Mr. Atkinson. Any further discussion? All right, that motion did pass. Yes, Mr.
Could we
Moore?
see about taking the other ones together unless somebody wants to pull them out?
Sure.
So that would be the two bus ones, the intercom, camera system, and the digital sign. Oh, wait, and then sales surplus. Oh, that's FY, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, the surplus sale, you have to.
We have to, okay.
Okay.
So it would be, I guess, all of those
Okay.
together, unless someone wants to talk about one separately.
So item 14I, 2 through item 14J.
That would be my motion.
Motion, do we have a second? Second by Mr. Pennings. Do we have any discussion on any of those, Mr. Atkinson?
Yes, on the sideline digital sign, that funds is coming straight out of their donations, I guess, team funds, not out of the school board, not out of our funds. I guess.
Stan, can
Ms.
you speak
Breeden,
to that?
can you-
Sorry.
The funds
Sorry.
on the sign is coming out just straight out of their central.
It's coming out of their funds, yes. It
Basketball.
is provided by, I think it's basketball funds. Yes. I don't know if Mr. Pointer is here or not, but
I just make sure, I thought that was what was discussed.
that is not from any budgeted or school district.
All right. Seeing no lights, we ready to vote? All right, that passed. Ms. Shirley, that did also include the surplus inventory. It also included the surplus inventory, approval of that. All right, moving on to finance. Keys to College and Career Readiness Funding, Round 2. Do we have any motions?
Just a question. Any motion would be to fund those items in the attachment that have not been funded?
We can take them up individually, we can take them up as a group, we can take up a dollar amount, however the board sees fit.
I move we approve round 2, round 3, round 4, 1, 5. For discussion anyway.
All right. Can you clarify, so essentially everything that was not funded in round 1, you're asking that that be funded Do we have an amount for that?
Is this $2,867,714? Is that it, correct, Dr. Marzak? I'm not sure what I'm looking at.
She's using that number.
Yeah, the 286.
286,7714.
I believe that's the correct number. Let me make 100% sure.
That would include diploma, catapult, and the ask from the schools.
Should have just done this first. Would have been easier. It's 1,729,769.
It's 1 million, say that again.
1,729,769. When you take that in the original amount, that adds up together to be 2,867,714.
Okay.
So the difference is 1,729,769.
My mo-
All right. We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Is there any discussion on this? Ms. Morency?
Question.
Any discussion? I'll just go ahead and speak to my thoughts on it. We've already heard tonight that we need an extra 21,500. And it seems like every time we come here, we hear we need an extra something. I'm just not clear on where these budgets are. And I have concerns about diploma, whether or not we're fully funding that. I think the information that was given to us was that that was to go towards funding just Hampshire and Mount Pleasant to get them fully one-to-one. Okay. And I would just say that I find it very concerning that our two largest high schools do not have one-to-one devices. That may be their doing, but I find that very concerning. And it's hard for me to see us going forward when the great majority of our kids are not being served by this. So I really want to know what that number needs to be to include at least the ninth graders at a minimum at each of those high schools. I think every other high school has devices, and I would like to see those ninth graders get started on this process. So that's one concern that I have with the diploma number, whether or not, one thing we talked about in strategic planning is if we're really behind something, we need to put our money where our mouth is. And I feel like in this, we are still just scattered as to what our priorities are. And I don't think that we're speaking with a very clear vision. Going back to RTI, that was a vision for us to have that. And I understand that it's going to be done in schools, but the way that this has been done, I would like to see AP funded, AP test scores funded. It will be funded at Mount Pleasant because Dr. Jackson asked for it. I don't think that it should just be funded at Mount Pleasant. I would like to know what that number is, and we talked about it a little bit at the work session. So to me, these numbers are they're just not good enough for me for round 2. And quite frankly, I think that there's some things that are wants and not needs. And I think that, I know sometimes we get accused of micromanaging, or maybe sometimes I get accused of micromanaging, but ultimately I think that it's incumbent upon some people to manage and to say this is not a good use of our savings account. Now, there's some things that are in there that I do think are a good use of our savings account, but I would really like for central office to really tighten their belt and really figure out what we need to actually fund in this. I do want to fund things in round 2, but I'm just not. I still feel like we are throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks, and there is not a clear academic plan for me. There's $200,000 in there for K2 resources. I want there to be K2 resources. I still don't know what the K2 resources are. They don't know what the K2 resources are. We're just throwing a number out there. $200,000 may not cut it for K2. $200,000 may be way too much for K2. I don't know. We don't know. We don't have good numbers here. And that's why I will not be supporting this particular motion. Any other discussion?
I guess I should discuss if I made the motion, but first of all, I do echo that I would really hope that that we would look at ninth graders at Spring Hill and Central being who would be think about it, seniors, no, juniors maybe not, but ninth graders, I hope that would be a priority. I think I wanted us to discuss it, and I understand totally what Ms. Parker's talking about, and it is kind of a hard any of it, but I do not feel like that the things that the principals, we kind of got away from, because some of them didn't go with RTI, but they asked for other things, and some things we're not sure as to whether they're necessary or not. But I do know that those principals have to have fundraisers all the time for everything they do. They're in a school anywhere that doesn't have to have fundraisers, either departmental fundraisers and whatever. So to my thinking, that this is not that huge a request for the things they requested. And there's actually, everybody kind of asked for about the same amount. I understand there was some back and forth about that, and I think maybe I would like to see those requests that were made by the principals funded. But anyway, I would understand if we want to say we don't want to move forward with this, but I think the more we put this off, the less likelihood that they'll be able to utilize these things. That's the way I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say, Ms. Kinzer, I don't disagree with you, but, my first grader's been in school for 9 weeks, and K through 2 resources haven't been purchased, and they won't be purchased probably until after the first of the year, which means that those teachers are then going to have to incorporate that potentially into their lessons for the second half of the year. I just think this was poor planning, plain and simple. I think that these things should have been funded a long time ago, and I think we were asking for these things to be funded a long time ago, and people have still been dragging their feet on it, particularly with the K2 resources. I know we had discussions about it probably, I think, in an email chain going back to April. So why we still don't have a list of what those things are, I don't know. But I just don't want to give somebody a blank check. And that's what I feel like $200,000 is doing. Mr. Moore.
Ms. Parker, you said you would be opposed to this. Would your intention be to have this come back to the next work session and we discuss it further, or?
I would like for us to discuss it further, but I would probably be amenable to considering some of the principal's requests if we wanted to tonight. I mean, I do recognize it, but there's some big ticket items there to me that I feel like we still need some more clarification on.
I am happy to withdraw my motion, but I would really like for us to consider the requests made by the principals to go on and fund those. That's not a lot of money. I mean, it's all a lot of money, but, and I also think we need to look at funding diploma for sure. So I'm, huh? So we're back up there, yeah.
Just doing some round numbers and stuff. I gave the board a worksheet on that per unit price. I don't know if we still have it in the packet tonight. And please don't hold me by that number, but the ninth grade, I believe there are 300 ninth graders at both Spring Hill, 300 ninth graders at Columbia Central, right? And so, again, we're looking at leasing the devices to cover that ninth grade. I'm looking at $152,000. And so the ninth grade could be, of the allocations being asked for, the ninth grade could be factored into it. The hesitation I have is leadership needs to encourage the staff to become diploma ready so that they are using the devices and not just rolling them out. I mean, with the ask for tonight, I believe we can make all that operational and such, but again, it gets back to staff first having the efficacy and the confidence to use the product, and then once they do, having the kids do it. Just a point of information for the board.
Can I just ask a clarification, though? I thought that, did you say there's 600 kids total at those two schools?
That's a guess.
A guess.
A guess, 300 freshmen at each.
At each school, so 600, and then the cost of each device about $775.
$760, and then divided over a lease by 3.
Okay.
So we're looking at a 3-year lease. We're not
Okay.
purchasing them outright. I mean,
No.
Okay.
My recommendation will always be to lease as opposed to buy.
Gotcha. Okay. That lease component was the part that I was missing. I mean, I know that we are, but I just always think of the 775 number.
Yeah, I mean, it's conceivable, but again, it gets back to building the efficacy of the teachers that they use the devices.
Well, and while we're only committing maybe to 165,000 for that class, we're really committing to 3 years. I mean, we're not wanting to take these devices out of those kids' hands, so we're going to want to have that same amount approved the following year too.
And again, as the board knows, and I'm hoping that when we have our meeting in October, that we continue to have a discussion with the elected officials about identifying a perpetual funding stream. So if that comes true, then we can very much speed up the timing.
Mr. Pennings?
Well, I'd like you to come back with real numbers. I mean, $760,000 or $760 or $720, and you're guesstimating how many students. If you're off by 15 or 20 students, that adds a lot of money to the program. And as far as the staff should encourage, I think the staff should demand, or the staff should order, that everybody get ready for it, not encourage.
The expectation would be the staff would
Demand.
get going, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't encourage them, force them to get ready. If we're gonna have it, we have to make sure they're ready, because there's no sense in spending the money if they're not ready to use it, none at all.
I just want to make sure that parameters were set for students to get these devices. And I know that some classes, some schools, some teachers have worked really hard to meet those parameters. It's really nice for us to say that every ninth grade should have it, but I think they should be held to that same standard. And I don't want to see us just go, well, we think every ninth grader should have it, so we're going to give it to them. I think that they need to be held to the same standards that that everyone else was held to in order to get their devices.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't be held to
Okay.
that standard before they receive their device. I'm just saying to say that we're going to spend all of our money on giving it out to everyone else and then have ninth graders that are certified, teachers that are certified, students that are certified, and because they are at our largest high schools, and it's a large pocket that we've got to fund, to say, no, we're not going to do that. And the comment that was made during the work session was, that might be a good thing, because then parents will want that to occur and will demand that. And that's more people that will be demanding that. And I just don't want children at Central and Spring Hill to be punished because they go to a larger school.
Oh, I completely agree, but I also know that some of the schools did like individual grades and individual classes and got ready for it. So it's to just say we're going to make sure that all ninth graders have them, I think, and I agree with you, I think they should, but I think that they have to meet those same requirements that everybody else had to meet.
Agreed.
Okay.
My recommendation on that, again, and again, I don't have the enrollment numbers in front of me, so I wish I could be more detailed for you this evening, sir, and I apologize. I think, we can allocate, just like we've allocated computers to kids that were diploma certified last year. To your point, the ones that were certified last year were the ones that were going to get them first this year, and with the leftovers, we will backfill them in. I do think that'd be a strong incentive for educated students and staff to say, you're sitting in the warehouse, but you've got to be able to show proficiency on it before we roll them out to you. So we can, I think we can do both. I think we can set enough aside for the ninth grade class, and then I do think those who have been working hard to get pre-approved, if you will, roll those out as well too. I think we can do both.
Ms. Kinzer.
It's my understanding that, is it the science department at Central's already done the first, and Mr. White, because I've been kind of, like, when are you going to get, and he says that they should all be by December. But, and to this point, and it would be the same at Spring Hill, you don't have maybe 2 fourth grades or one this. You've got several English teachers, several science teachers, multiple math teachers that have to collaborate, work, get it all together, get the rubrics together, and then also all of their students, of which there are many with those levels as well. So it's a little bit more, I don't say, the word's not intense, but there's a lot labor intensive, I guess, maybe. Am I correct?
They have to pull together and be more collaborative.
Right, and that's a good thing. But with everything else too, it just takes time to do that. So, but yes, I agree with Ms. Morency. Everybody should meet the same standard. And I don't think they're not trying to meet the standard. I just think they have a lot more people that have to collaborate and come together.
And I guess I circle back to, and I wasn't here when folks were going through the process last spring, but I guess I would circle back to Mount Pleasant has multiple sections, and they were able to work through the process.
Yes.
The unit schools, Santa Fe and Holyoke have been working through the process. So it's just a matter of taking it to scale. The model is there, right? We just need to take it to scale.
Okay, I won't get too far into this, but just keep in mind, we've got two things here. We're talking about there's a staff side of this and there's a student side. And I can understand the staff side being prepared, but the reality is, and I think this gets to somewhat of what Ms. Parker was saying, is there's students at Spring Hill High School that have basically been told they're not going to get a device. And they're told that because, well, it is true, because we haven't funded the devices. And at some point, the reality is some people aren't going to work too hard to get through this process, knowing that on the horizon there's no funding for the devices. Because we couldn't put a device in every student's hand today. We haven't funded that. There's no way. So at some point, when you've only got 100 seats on the bus and you've already got 98 of them full, you're not going to have too many people really fighting too hard to, when they realize only 2 more people are going to get on the bus. I mean, that's just the reality of that. So, and again, it's not a thing. You don't need to get on to anybody for that. But the reality is there's students sitting at some of these schools, such as Spring Hill or Central, that are realizing, I'm a junior here and I'm just not going to see a device. Or maybe I'm a freshman and I may see one when I'm a senior. So just keep in mind, again, we can talk about the staff side of that, or not being prepared, or coordinating, or however you want to look at it, but that's the students' view of this. They're realizing we've put an initiative in place and they just, we're never going to see that. So keep that in mind.
I will just say, going back to the principal part that you spoke about, Ms. Kinzer, I still just want to know what we're going to get out of this. I want to know what funding a Dave Ramsey book is going to get us on the state report card that we get. Those are the things that I know it's part of the key. I know it's key 6, but when I look at our test scores, I want to make sure that we got the math and reading part done before I make sure that we got the financial literacy part. That's great, but I feel like we should already have stuff. And I know Dr. Woodard said we want them to go deeper. I may not want to pay to go deeper on financial literacy. I may want to pay to go deeper on English and math and social studies and science and the things that get tested. So that's my problem, too, with some of the principal requests. And in general, I appreciate that a lot of them are trying to think outside of the box. But I go back to, I want to make sure that we're being good stewards of of the taxpayers' money, and I want to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. And based on the test scores that I saw, I don't see how all of these keys requests from principals get us further on some of those standardized tests. And that's where my real concern is.
Gotcha. So let's go back to 2015, 2016. Some of you weren't here. So when we started talking about the keys of college and career readiness, and we started talking about systemic and systematic improvement, the idea was going beyond. Now, don't get me that I'm not saying state tests are not important, because they are. It's basically how the system is judged. It's basically talks about, basically across the entire state how we're currently doing. But as you've seen this year, and as you saw last year, state tests change on a dime. They can pull the plug at the last second, and guess what? All of a sudden, you're not doing it. So when we started talking about the keys in college and career readiness, one of the things we talked about was rising above state tests, basically not using or not allowing the state test to determine our worth as a system, if you will. Because like we've talked about before and I've shared with you before, even when you take the state test, they don't establish proficiency until after everybody has taken the test and they've scored them all. So with concerns to state tests, there are going to be some kids that always fail. There's going to be some kids that always succeed. And you never know where that's going to be until the state actually releases the results. So we implemented the keys in order to not allow the state test to determine our worth as a district. And not only that, we're also listening to what the community said. This is what we want you to do for our kids. You know, we have financial literacy. You make a good point. Good point. Financial literacy was a #1 request by people. We have a large number of check cashing places in our community, and I think our parents are sick of that paying 26% interest compounding daily. So they wanted us to make a greater impact with their children with concerns to financial literacy. And so as you look down this list, these are all things that principals pulled up that they said would make an impact with their kids according to what the community said is extremely important for kids in order to be successful. Now, let's go to the other side of the coin. I shared some information with you today about the state tests, with what Dr. McQueen is saying. State test proficiencies are going to drop. New testing, new test vendor, new test standards, state testing proficiency was going to drop. But I think we have a greater problem in our system other than that. And our problem that I've seen over the last 2 years is that our ladder is not against the right wall. We haven't been ensuring that students are learning what they're going to be assessed on with state tests. We can actually do both. We can actually ensure that kids are reading on grade level and ensuring that they're learning those English language arts standards in 3rd and 4th grade that they're then going to turn around and answer correctly on a state test. So Dr. Woodard shared some work with you earlier this week, his P5 model, where we are now working with principals to ensure that they're working with teachers to make sure that students are now learning assessed standards every single day so that they will now they'll now practice the way they intend to play. That's not something that I see that's been happening in this district. So the ladder wasn't against the right wall. So kids have gone into state tests and they didn't know and have not mastered what they needed to do in order to be successful on those tests. We're now putting that ladder against the right wall. We're now implementing instructional leadership because principals are in buildings every single day. They talk to teachers. They can make sure that ladder is against the right wall. So we're working on that. We're bringing that around, and we're trying to make that an emphasis in our schools. But we don't want to become a test bed center. We don't want to be a school system where we do test prep every single day because that disengages kids. So that's where the project-based learning comes in. It's fun, it's energetic, it's exciting, But at the background of project-based learning are making sure that those kids are mastering those assessed standards by not doing boring things, but things in the classroom that are exciting. But bringing it back around to here, going all the way back to February when we first started to meet with principals, the lists you're seeing here were vetted against and pushed back against the principals. Principals had already pushed back against the teachers when it was presented to them. They decided what made it to the next level. Then they presented to us, and then we decided what made it to the next level. Then we brought it to you guys, and you guys decided what made it to the next level. So the lists you're seeing here have been vetted multiple times in order to, if you look down the list, put resources into kids' hands in order to be successful. So that's currently where we are at this point, if you will. That's it.
Dr. Marzak, I will just say, you're entering your third school year.
Yes.
Why is it taking until the third school year for the ladder to be up against the right wall?
I think one of the things that I've talked to multiple board members and multiple people about since I've gotten here is there was very little instructional leadership when I arrived in the district. So now we're implementing instructional leadership. Principals were not instructional leaders, they were managers of buildings. And so now we've started to emphasize instructional leadership. Meeting with teachers frequently, being a part of grade level meetings, being a part of professional learning community meetings. That hasn't been taking place in the past, it's taking place now. And having conversations about assessed standards. One of the things that I've shared with a couple of you is, so teaching for the Lipscomb course here at Whitthorne with current Murray County school teachers this past fall, when I talked to them about one of the core basics of professional learning communities is students will master assessed standards first. When I showed them the Blueprint website, and granted, this is all Murray County teachers and current principals, they'd never seen the website before. And this website has been in effect for 15 years. They didn't know that the assessed standards were on the website. So we're now moving into a different realm of leadership in Murray County Public Schools, which is instructional leadership, not managerial leadership. So I'm finding it's a huge paradigm shift. It's a huge shift for teachers and principals in the district. But we'll get them there. We'll get them there.
Well, and I'm not saying that you won't get them there. I would just go back to, there's still I's not being dotted and T's not being crossed.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's the new standards and having report cards that are consistent with those new standards.
Yeah.
That's not been done. We started the school year with some teachers not having pacing guides for the new standards. I mean, these are things that should be checked off. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, we pay people for 12 months to get this stuff done. And if we need to pay teachers to come in and do pacing guides and things like that, like I would want to pay for that in this Keys budget. Because those are the type of instructional things that I'm not seeing getting done.
Yeah.
And that's why I've got to question all this stuff, because I know that come later on, I'm probably going to want to fund that kind of stuff. But I don't want to necessarily fund something that, some principal decided that this will make it better for their students this year. But I still don't see where this is saying where we want to be, where they want to be even. I don't see expectations attached to this. What?
Well, remember that each and every single one of these is going to be scorecarded. So,
Right.
so there will be, Dr. Preninger will sit down with each individual school's data coach. The data coach will then also be a part of conversations with principals and teachers, and they'll metric all of this. So go back to last May, I provided you guys a return on investment presentation to the school board. This is the kind of growth we saw with the investment that you made last year. This is what happened with students. This is how they grew with reading. We grew as a district amongst all third grade students. We grew over 100 Lexile points. That's pretty impressive for an entire district, especially a district that still has a large free and reduced lunch population. So it's kind of weird to say it's a process.
But the
It takes
Lexile
time.
level isn't translating into the testing part.
Exactly.
And so there's still a disconnect there. And that's what I'm saying is I want to fund these keys, but I want to know that it's addressing that gap.
Yeah.
That's where I'm saying I don't see the connection.
And there's and there's two separate issues there. One is kids reading on grade level, and then the other one is kids answering questions on content that is asked on a standardized assessment. And there's two totally different things. If kids can't read, most likely they're not going to be able to answer that question right if they know how to read that question. So we're actually doing and growing a 300 Lexile level. We were still ending at the end of last year, or end of last year, probably in a low to mid second grade level as an average reading level. So we're still nowhere near close after just 1 year of getting to Key 3 with all students reading on grade level by the end of third grade. We still have 1 year and about 8 months left to go as an average for the entire district. But we're working towards that, and we're pushing towards it to try to get as many kids reading on grade level as we can by the end of the year.
We have
It's never easy.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further discussion on it? Do we want to go ahead and vote on Ms. Kinzer's motion to approve the additional $1,729,000 that was thereabouts that was requested in round 2? Seeing no lights, I think we're ready. Am I missing a light?
What do you got? 769, not 59. $10 more. And take off the first one, 287. Thank you, ma'am. And instead of saying diploma catapult principal request, could you put keys round 2 funding? Because there's more than just that. That's fine. That's fine.
All right, that motion did fail. Do we want to consider any other requests related to Keys 2, or do we want to kick this back to the work session? All right. Motion and a second to take it back to the work session. Do we really even need to approve that? Do we need to approve that, Jake?
To take it back.
Take it back.
Just take no action.
Just take no action. Yeah, we'll put it on there in October. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the Alleview report. We just FYI. I think the rest of them are FYIs. Are there any questions on any of the other remaining items in the finance section?
You have to vote on budget amendments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
K7.
deal.
I have a question.
Ms. Morency?
Did you ever find the answer to the question I asked about the capital?
Yes, I emailed all of you. Did you not get my email?
I didn't get it.
Okay. So, yes, so basically, it was an email from September the 18th at 11:30 in the morning. Went to all the board. It says it's related to building improvements, rekeying interior doors, storm site drainage improvement at all 8 schools, hydraulic elevator upgrades, bleacher repairs, and then paint is what's been coded so far from capital outlay.
Okay. I guess to what I think about that, or I guess my question about it is that the schools that haven't had work done on them against, say, Central, who's a brand-new school, that doesn't seem like that would be apples for apples.
Yeah. And so the conversation we had at the work session is trying to take all of our costs and everything and kind of divvy it out amongst the schools just to see where we lie. For example, there was a conversation about, like, for example, I'm not assigned to a school. So take my salary, divide by 22, and attribute it to all the schools. So just to kind of see where we lie concerning to what we budget to what we spend at the end of the year. So trying to take our entire budget and try to divvy it out, just to see where our money is going, is really the idea of the Allen View report. Not necessarily to say that this is wrong or this is right, but where is the taxpayer money going? So that's the idea.
All right. It still doesn't make sense to me, I guess,
Yeah.
Because now you have, like you have Baker, and it says that they are spending more money on Baker than they are on.
We budgeted the most at Baker, yes. And so when you look at
But that's not what this, it didn't say it was budgeted. This is what it said it cost to educate a child.
No,
And that's not right.
Yeah,
It's not what it costs to educate a child at that school.
Going back to the Allen View report, and I think what you're talking about is slide number. I think you're going to slide number 5. The top says per pupil budget by school, and that's basically how we're ranking the budgeting at each school per pupil. So that one was a budget. When we got down to everything is a budget until you get to slide 8, which is the current per pupil spending by enrollment, where we are July 1st to September the 7th. And so you'll see that where we're currently spending the most per pupil is actually at Highland Park Elementary School.
Okay, so the $500,000 grant that Mount Pleasant got, is that in here?
According to what Mr. Parliament, at the time we had the work session, no, that had not been posted yet.
Okay.
But you're making a good point, and we talked about it a little bit at the work session, in that 500,000 is gonna bump
Yeah.
Mount Pleasant High School up and almost penalize them for getting a grant.
Right.
And I don't think that should be the case either. So, I
Yeah,
mean, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in this report and getting it to where it gives us something that's accurate, because,
Yeah.
I don't think Mount Pleasant should be punished because they got a $500,000 grant. That's something that we should be commending them for. But the way that this is structured right now, it's going to bump them up just because of their enrollment and the size of that grant. I mean, that would be hard for any
and
school to absorb at this
I
point.
guess my problem is not just with Mount Pleasant, but my problem is that what we asked for, we didn't get. We asked for what it costs to educate a child at each school.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what we got.
We have it currently through September the 7th.
We got what we've allocated for each school, but, so maybe for this year, but if you go back and if you included what it costs to build Central, that's not included in here.
No.
So it cost more to educate those kids at Central last year and the year before than it did in the coming years. Does that make sense?
It does, but the construction costs are outside of our general purpose budget. That's money that's maintained by the county commission that we send them the bills to and then they pay it. So that's not a part of our budget.
I think your point is well taken, though, in that essentially what you're saying is the cost to educate a child at Central, there should be a cost for that school that's almost amortized, the life of that bond or whatnot, because there is still a cost associated with that. For some of the schools that are already bought and paid for, so to speak, but may have more maintenance costs. I mean, Central probably doesn't have the same amount of maintenance costs, but
it just doesn't seem like this is apples to apples.
I don't think so either.
So I just.
And remember, this is just to spark discussion to talk about.
Okay.
So if we see it,
It's working.
Why is Randolph Howell only 5237? Well, then we dig into Randolph Howell and we just have a conversation. So it's just to provide information and to spark conversation.
Okay.
I think everything else under finance was an FYI, except for the budget amendments. Motion to approve the budget amendments by Mr. Atkinson, second by Mr. Pennings. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion passed. Item 15 is all FYI. Are there any questions about that? If there are none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
this thing's not on the calendar, but y'all just please remember the thing at McDowell on the 16th, please.
On the 16th.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn by acclamation.